Aloha and welcome to Author Talk. I'm Laura Yerxa coming to you from the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii. And I'm super excited about my guest today, Deanna Lawlis. We're going to talk about her book. You can hold it up, Deanna. Her book is Of Ashes and Embers, Exploring Self-Awareness After Spiritual Trauma. And her book is chock full of knowledge and experience. And so I'm excited to talk to you, Deanna. Thank you. Welcome to be here.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to ask you is, how did you come up with that title? Like, why did you name your book Of Ashes and Embers?
Well, first of all, I'm a country girl, so I understand the process of starting a fire, and so I kind of put it, listed it toward how I felt going through the process of my life within the church, and then the effects of what happened with the issue and that we're going to be discussing today, and then also the deconstruction and the aftermath. And it felt very much like starting a fire and then dwindling one out. So that's how I came up with that, Of Ashes and Embers.
Okay. Yeah, good. So it's kind of a one fire's dying out while another one is building up.
Yes, ma'am.
Like it. Love it a lot. So you, again, your tagline is exploring self-awareness after spiritual abuse. And so you, just in a very general way to put it, did not have a great experience with the organized church, the organized Christian evangelical church specifically.
Right.
So when you say that, are you talking about just that specific denomination, or are you meaning church as a whole?
I will have to say that it really has been church as a whole, as although it began with that specific denomination, which was considered non-denominational. I attended that one for 21 years, and then I attended a secondary church that didn't have a title, but it stemmed from a Methodist church. I attended that one secondary for about 2 years, and had not the same experience as the first one, but another experience where harm was being brought to people. And then just in the aftermath of seeing all of the devastation and destruction in other people's lives, my husband and I, for instance, my husband attended a Baptist church, and because I was not attending church, he was shunned and removed from children's ministry. I mean, I can go on and on about the abuses that happen involving the church. So it's not just, well, it is the evangelical church, but that covers a lot of areas.
Yes. Yeah.
It covers Methodist, Baptist, non-denominational.
Yeah.
It's so many different areas.
Okay. So, and also I just want to be clear, because I personally have had the exact opposite experience.
Right.
And so I just want to clear this right up at the beginning. I feel like you have indicted like all church leaders anyway. So I don't know if you meant to do that, or if, I
will tell you that I live in the South, okay?
Yeah.
And evangelicalism here in the South, which is pretty much what you got here, every now and again you'll find a Catholic church around the corner,
Yeah.
This is a very Bible-beating area to live in. And so I can honestly sit here and tell you that I have family and friends that are in attendance of the evangelical church, but when you are no longer a part of it and you step outside of it, you can see the situations that are occurring that are actually accepted within the church. They've learned this behavior so they don't think it's damaging to other people or to themselves. Sure. And yet it continues throughout the church as though it's a normal, natural thing. And you don't realize when you're in it, because I used to be in it for 23 years. And I look back on these things and I say the same things. I was the same way. You don't realize how much you're actually damaging people when you say or believe some of the things that you do. And so, yes, I kind of am indicting the church in general, simply because of the, you know, we can go further into some of the topics, but yeah, because it is a damaging thing. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to get this for people listening, just to have you say that, clear the air, because I know that not everybody has the same experience, even if you have kind of stepped back and taken a look. But you did, and that's what we're talking about today. And I love the way you wrote your book. You brought psychology into it, science into it, just the processes in our mind as to why. I thought your book was really really about the process of healing.
Yes.
You know, I mean, your opinion about the church certainly comes through, or organized religion. But I love the way that you explained your healing process out of it. You know, you use the word deconstructing, and all of that. But why did you, like I had written down, you were raised under, and I think this was your words, raised under continuous criticism. So it sounded like you went to the church initially because you were broken.
Yes, I believe that I was a broken young lady. My sister and I grew up in a home that was alcoholic, and she on, you know, you hear about the perfectionist, and then the overachiever and the underachiever that comes out of that. And she was the overachiever, so she kind of scapegoated through, you know, a lot of things, and I was the underachiever, so I got a lot of criticism because of that. Never could live up to her because I wasn't her. So yes, by the time I stepped foot into the church, I was quite a broken young lady. I had already had my first child, and I had already married, and I was 15 years old. So absolutely, I had no sense of self-worth.
Okay. And so you wanted to, you thought you were going to go to the church and find solace and peace and healing and, you know, just a place, a safe place, maybe.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so you started going to church, and what happened? It must have taken, like, you stayed for 21 years, but you must have felt something, like, within the first couple years anyway, that didn't seem right. So what were some of the things?
Yeah, looking back on the entire 21 years, I had a lot of red flags, but I stayed because I didn't have a high opinion of myself. So whenever there was abuse that was offered, naturally I accepted the blame for it and said, well, I need to get better. I need to work on myself. And you know, it was, you know, a very performance-based, you know, sort of faith for me. I worked my tail off to please God, to please the church that I was in attendance of, and to please my church family, and to please everybody else. And it never seemed to, I never seemed to be able to reach that point. So
yes, because we can't, right? And that's unrealistic. And so you thought maybe you were going to find a safe place, but instead you feel like you went into a place where you still had to be approved by what you did, by your performance.
Yes.
And maybe were taught by the leadership that you had to get God's approval as well. Like you had to
Yes.
do these things, not just for my approval, but this is what God's expecting. This is God's standard.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you feel though that like God himself was putting those kinds of pressures on you?
You know, the church that I came from did not teach grace, you know, and so it was completely hellfire and brimstone. And that's typical of what you find here in the South.
I will say that I've never attended that particular style of church. So yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, so there's a lot of, you know, grace is spoken of if it's, you know, if somebody who has, you know, some authority there has made a mistake, obviously they're going to speak of grace at that point. But if somebody in the congregation has made a mistake, then in this specific congregation, they would be called out from the pulpit and you know, spoken to as though they either need to get their life right or they're going to, you know, face hellfire and, you know, torment and all that jazz. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, you know, we don't want, we don't want that. Probably nobody probably even wants to witness that. You know, especially from church where you think you're going to get healing and solace and all of that. So I'm sorry that you had to go through all of that. I mean, I really am. It makes my heart, it hurts my heart, you know, that's out there. But still, like during your during all of this, you went to school to be in the ministry, you know, like the word is escaping me now. The type of school, but
I went to school to be for ministerial counseling.
Yes.
I opened 2 recovery houses for women with that degree, and then after I left the church, I wanted to continue with helping people. So my degree I could not utilize in non-religious, you know, areas. So I went for my bachelor's in psychology degree. However, I did not finish that degree because I took custody of one of my grandchildren at the time. And as you know, that's a full-time ministry of itself. So, but yes, yeah. And I continued researching. I continued researching through other methods via psychology and the aftermath, and then of course biblical theology, all types of theology. I'm just, you know, I can't not but learn. I'm one of those people who soaks in knowledge, so I like to learn, and so that's where all of that information came in from.
Yes, yeah. And so you're learning, you know, all of this information, gathering it and applying it to your own life, like you're using, you know, your own research on yourself. And that was actually what I loved about your book and the way you explained some of these things. And so one of the things that you talked about a lot that happens when somebody has experienced spiritual trauma, as you did, or spiritual abuse, but you talk about cognitive dissonance. And so I hadn't heard it explained, you know, exactly how you did. So that was really helpful for me. And I can see it in my own life. I literally just had that kind of experience the other day.
Right.
But so explain that and tell us how you connected that with your relationship to the church.
You know, I went through such a horrible time in the aftermath of it. Now, you know, at the point that the situation occurred and I left the first church and went on into the secondary one, I was really still trying to be a good Christian, you know, and do everything that I had been doing, continuing on. And I succeeded in doing that for like a year and a half to 2 years. And that's when, you know, the situation with the LGBTQ and the Chick-fil-A and all of that jazz happened. And I had friends participate in that, and I saw so many people that I was friends with, and, you know, being LGBTQ, I saw them wounded as well. And that was really the point when everything started just glitching for me, because I had already been wounded. I was watching the church in a mass formation wound so many other people, and I guess my mind started going, you know, if this is God, you know, these are his people doing this. God's not stopping his people from doing this. So, you know, if this is God, I don't want any part of it. And so my mind went from God is supposed to be, you know, almighty and loving and for everyone, but his people are, you know, this is the actions that his people are showing forth, and his protection's not there stopping them. In fact, they look like they're being blessed in the process of it. So, you know, the glitching began at that point. That's where the cognitive dissonance stepped in for me. And it was one way of thinking, another way of thinking, and none of it was making sense. And so from that point forward, just my mind went bonkers.
And so it never, you never thought that maybe that God was actually being grieved by that, because it's free choice, right? We have free will and free choice. So those people made a choice, but maybe that choice grieved God. Was that kind of one of your things that you had to work through?
Never once did I think that at the time, because my teaching here had been that, you know, God, I mean, you know, look, the Old Testament is very much taught here.
Good times.
I don't know how much better I can put it. We all are very aware of how God was in the Old Testament, and so it's very much taught here. And so obviously, you know, most believers here align themselves with, hey, you know, we have the right to speak up and say this is wrong, and it doesn't matter if it hurts people, the truth hurts. And, you know, and so no, I didn't once think that it grieved God. I know that it grieved me. But no, never once did I correlate that grievance within myself to be something that God was doing within me. And then, of course, you have such a large consensus. I mean, a large consensus of people that are doing this, that are saying that they are God's, you know, children. And you look at it as a whole, and you just go, you know what? No, it's not what I want to be a part of. So I walked.
Yeah.
At that point.
And so in cognitive dissonance, I think you explained it as believing one thing, you know, believing something deeply, and then all of a sudden seeing that wasn't real or true or what you thought at all. Like the example you used was Santa Claus. Like kids, we just grow up knowing there's a Santa Claus, so we're 6 or 7, because there's because it's just ingrained right in that age, and then all of a sudden you're told that there's no Santa Claus, and you got to wrap your brain around it, and so that is called cognitive dissonance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because another thing I liked about that and the way you laid out kind of your healing in arguments, really, can be applied to anything, to kind of all things. Just the psychology of it. Yeah. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, you are, you've left the church now, and you're deconstructing all of those beliefs that you had, and doing your best to implement kind of new beliefs, and so naturally you try other things, in the beginning, which were what other things, did you kind of try when you first came out of the church?
I stepped into Wiccanry briefly, and just some of the rituals that they had reminded me a little bit too much of Christianity. And then, and so because at that point, when I washed my hands of Christianity, I instantly was soon diagnosed. I instantly began suffering with, but I was soon diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative, because I had been walking around in my body for like 2 weeks, feeling like I was not inside myself. I was inside somebody else's body. And it was literally like, do you remember the old TV screens where there would be like a double shadow, or there'd be a shadow across somebody on the screen? It'd be like a double vision of that person. It wasn't quite tuned in.
Okay.
These are the old. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like I was doing for 2 weeks. And then I went to psychiatrist and just to find out what was going on, and ended up being committed into a psych ward because I was out of it. So I stepped into Wiccanry, and like I said, there was those issues there were some similarities. Well, you got to remember, once you have PTSD, you have all of the signs of that too. So if there was anything that was remotely similar to anything Christian, it was creating triggers for me, and I was tremors and nausea and just inability to function. So Wiccanry didn't work for me. Then I tried, I did shamanism and the meditation. I actually had began teaching online courses for meditation, was going beautifully, but the part of it that I could not ever get into was, the totem ray, or, the animal imaginations. If you're traveling through the woods and you let whatever animal come forward, I couldn't get into that, because that also was make believe. And so there were a lot of things that I tried to work my way through that created triggers for me, simply because of the experience that I had had.
Yeah. And so you try these other things, and they didn't quite work. And then we get then so you kind of have given up, completely on anything spiritual or any kind of spirituality until October of 2018, when that you have that very kind of experience.
Yeah, and that, if I kind of wish that I could just lay out exactly the type of person that I was for 5 years, after 5 years having no spiritual anything going on. I was very, very angry and bitter and vengeful, and I was not a good person, and every bit of bullying I felt like I had received, I was giving back tenfold. And to people who, really were not a part of the situation, So I've had to make a lot of amends. But on October of 2018, I was driving down the road. I had been suffering at that point for a number of years, 5+ years, 6 years, somewhere around there, with post-traumatic stress disorder, triggers involving, you could have told me Bible, Jesus Christ, God, church, any word that would have referenced anything involving Christianity would literally cause me to have sweats, panic, tremors. And I live in, a very evangelical community. So if you can imagine, I was at least once a day being asked where I go to church. So, it was pretty bad. And so that day I was driving through one of the cities. My husband was in the car with me, and I just had this revelation of sorts occur. And at the same time that I had the revelation, all of the emotional pain, all of the physical pain, everything that I had felt for 5+ years, 6 years, completely left me in a blink of an eye. I had peace and warmth, and it was just so different. It was a very surreal moment. I can't explain it. I felt crazy even having it, because I had been just the night before, at the point in my life where I was hoping I wouldn't wake up the next day, and all of a sudden this day, comes, and I'm looking at it like, wow, there's new perspective, and there's colors in the sky, and everything just changed. And in my revelation, I had it was of Christ and Holy Spirit, and as if I was being pointed back into that direction. Mm-hmm. And so I went back into that direction, didn't tell anybody other than my husband about the experience, who, by the way, was floored, because he knew how much I, even though he himself was a Christian, mm-hmm. he had actually been very accepting and understanding toward me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he had also been bullied for being in a relationship with me, not being, a part of that his denomination. But anyway, so he was like floored. So he knew all about it, but nobody else did. I didn't tell anybody else about it because I was afraid that if I did, that I would fall right back into the same hands that I struggled to get away from. Mm-hmm. And I was so much at peace, I didn't want to lose it, because that was peace like I had not had in years, Mm-hmm. So so that experience happened. It was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm glad that you had that experience. And so you had been doing this this other kind of technique, and then you have your spiritual experience, and you continue with this technique of the way you kind of deconstructed, because I just thought this was a great other tool that a person could use for anything, was that you began to sort out what you know to be like what you know tangibly and yes. what you believe. So, and figuring out the difference for yourself between know and believe. And I thought that was great as well.
Yes. So because you're taught so many different things, there are so many different things that if we really look back on our lives and take into consideration everything that we've been taught, which, by the way, if we were taught them, then whoever taught them to us was taught them as well.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't just place blame at the generation before you, because it's been going on for mm-hmm. many, many years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if we really, not just in purpose of religion, but if we were to look back at our entire lives and everything that we've been taught, everything that we have taken a hold of in what we believe, have we really had experience with that? Mm-hmm. If we haven't had an experience with that, then we can't really say that we know it to be true.
Right.
So that's how I began breaking down my spiritual relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Because my relationship with God on October 2018, I was met with a very welcoming, loving, warm, peaceful creator that completely changed my world. It makes me emotional thinking about it. But it's not the God that I was introduced to in the church. The God that I was introduced to in the church, I was in fear of, right. And I had been taught to fear. Everything that I did was being watched by this idea of God, and I'm human. I make a lot of mistakes like every human does. And so obviously that means that anyone who's taught about that idea of God is living in a constant state of fear. And I just don't believe that that's a great way to be teaching about something that created us all, Why should we fear a creator that obviously saw it fit enough for us to be here, or we wouldn't be here, So that's where I started doing the know versus belief. And belief can be a beautiful thing, but you have to be very careful with it. To know is to have experienced, and so that is the foundation that we should stand upon in everything in our lives, but also in our spirituality.
Yes, for sure. First-hand revelation, as it says, as opposed to second-hand revelation. So great. We're kind of at the end of our time, but is there one last thing that you want to say or leave to your readers?
I just want everyone who has been through this situation of spiritual trauma to know that they are not alone, that they are not crazy. It is a very real thing that occurs, and there are plenty of groups in social media out there that they can connect with. They don't have to go in and introduce themselves initially. They can sit back and watch and see who they can relate to. And there's a whirlwind of information out there that they can research as well in order to get help and heal from this horrible experience that they've had.
All right. Well, thank you. Deanna, stick around for a little bit, but everybody else, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope you've got some great information here. And if you could hold your book up one more time, Deanna's book of Ashes and Embers is available on Amazon. And again, if you're have experienced spiritual trauma or spiritual abuse, this is a good kind of roadmap out of that, or to deconstruct, as Deanna says. So aloha, everybody, and we will see you next time.